Okay, so a button is one of the things that can trigger an event, okay, because the user can interact with it. The three things that I'm going to show you here, obviously we've got the master. The text is what appears on the button. You can see you can also put images and text in a button. And command is what that button does when it clicks, when it gets clicked. Now this, my function, is just a regular function that I've defined in my Python code. So let's take a look at how that works. You will notice that my function does not have parentheses when I'm calling it. The reason for that is that if I put parentheses after my function, it will call it when the button appears on the screen, not when it's clicked. So if I want it to wait till it's clicked, I just put the name of the function with no parentheses. So let's make a little function up here. I still like to put my functions up here at the top. Okay, so all this is going to do is print the button was clicked. And so let's put in a button. Button equals TK button. Let's put in the frame. Text equals click me. And command equals, what was that command? It's not going to show up there. Click me. Okay. There it is. Okay. I did. You're right. It's clicked me. That sounds weird. All right. Clicked me. There we go. Now, notice. It wants to put the parentheses in there. But when I do that, what's going to happen, let me pack that real quick so it shows up. As soon as that button appears on the screen, you can see it says the button was clicked. The button was not clicked, I can assure you. So what I want it to do is wait for me to click it. So I'm going to delete those. And now, every time I click the button, it registers. What's that? I haven't ever tried, but I'm going to guess no, but let's try it anyway. Yeah, because it's executing when it appears. It's actually triggering that. It changes it to a different execution method. So command equals, and notice no, it's not a string. I'm just referring straight to that function, but with no parentheses there. So that is the most basic way of interacting with users, is to have the button widget. Okay, a check button. We're going to introduce a new concept, one that I think is kind of weird, but you just sometimes with these external libraries, you just take the weird and you roll with it, like the way there's a string to specify the window dimensions. This string variable object is a way of initializing a string variable so that it can be used by a control. In this case, it's a checkbox, which is either checked or not checked. Those are the two states of a checkbox. So if I do it, it's called a check button, which drives me nuts. It's obviously a box, but it's called a check button. It's in the frame. The text is whatever's next to it. So it doesn't require an extra label. It actually carries its own text next to it. And then you can have it execute a command when it's checked. But what you're really interested in is knowing whether it's checked or not checked. So the way this works is we create a system or a variable. In this case, it's we're creating a checkbox, presumably to decide whether to use the metric system or not. So we're going to call it a measure system, and it's a string variable. And so that variable, we're connecting it here. We're saying that this checkbox controls this variable, and when it's on, that variable equals metric. So when it's checked, it equals metric, and when it's not checked, it equals imperial, which is this stupid way we do things in America. So I don't know, imperial's kind of I guess it sounds better than the dumb way, but anyway. So that actually will toggle the value of that variable in your code, so that you can access that and use that in a function or whatever. You don't have to have the command associated with it for this part to work. You can do either or both. Okay, so I'm going to keep going here. Radio button is similar to a checkbox, except it presents a group of which you can only check one. And they are connected by the same variable. That's how we know that that's how TK knows that they're in a group together. I don't know why we're choosing South Park characters. Those aren't my images. But anyway, that's what's in the documentation. So again, we're using string variable to create a variable called phone. And then we have, for each radio button, its parent, the text that appears next to it, the variable that it impacts, and the value of that variable when that one is selected. So it can be home, office, or cell in that group. Okay. And I would pack those. Notice those are all individual objects or individual instances. So I'm creating 3 radio buttons here. They're grouped by the variable, but each one is its own object. So I'm going to have to pack them all separately. Let's just take a look at this in the code. All right, so and I'm just going to put that in the window. Okay, and let's invoke the pack right there next to each other. Pack and pack. Let's run that. Okay, now there's some additional work that needs to be done here because I haven't given it an initial value yet. So what you want to do is you want to decide what the initial value is, and that will determine which one is checked. Okay. So those are non-functional for some reason, but I'm going to keep going and not debug those. If you want to use radio buttons and you can't figure that out, we'll get into it. But I'm going to just keep rolling on because, my opinion, radio buttons are overly complicated for what you get out of them. But if you want to use those, then we'll get into it. And the documentation is very good there too. This is more about an overview than getting into the details. Here's one that you will use quite frequently. And again, I'm using the string variable to bind that to a variable. In fact, those are the only two that I have here. It's the TK entry field, so it's text entry, the parent, and the variable that it's used for. The other way to do this is there is a get method. So I could say name.get and assign that to a variable on the fly too. I can use that inside of a function. So this just presents something that the user is allowed to type in, a single line. There is a multi-line text box, but I'm going to let you look that up in the documentation. Combo box, just a straightforward drop-down menu. Okay, and you are going to give this a list of values as an array. Okay, and the combo box allows you to select from that list. But at a minimum, you're going to bind it to a variable and tell which frame to be in.